There were many things in commonality with the European panelists. Thank you very much. Now we have 15 or more precisely 10 minutes left, and I'm sure there are urgent questions that the people amongst the audience would like to ask. And if you could be succinct, and please raise your hand if you have any question, and please identify yourself before you speak. Anybody, please?
はい、そちらの方、はい、森さん。はい。
こういうところで文部科
To try to openly say that I am from the next Ministry of Education. My name is Mori. Since I am engaged in policy research, I'm not really a direct party to the process, but there is a question I would like to earnestly ask you. On the decontamination, everybody needs to learn a lot. There are many things that we need to learn for the future. But since we have such an illustrious members in the panel, very recently we have restarted the operation of the OE nuclear power plant. And in a very short period of time, a very important social decision that was made with governments and experts and stakeholders, as well as local residents. I may be one of those experts who do not know much about the society. But if I could ask the panelists who are non-Japanese, and there are also panelists from Fukushima Prefecture, that was a grave societal decision undertaken by the Japanese community. So I would like to hear the impression of the people outside of Japan. How do you regard the question of restarting the nuclear power plants in relation to decontamination? As Professor Shirawa has said, we need to think about 10 years or 20 years. And it is said that the half the life of the cesium is 28 years. It would take another 28 years to further half that. So you need to think in terms of centuries. But if I could ask you a question about the restarting of the OE, the nuclear power plant, that was said to be a national decision. So it is a simple question. The decision-making and the debate done by the Japanese people and the remaining questions and so forth. I would like to hear your impression, especially to the non-Japanese panelists. Thank you. Any other question, please?
Yes, please. No, you can go ahead.
Asian Development Bank Institute, and I'm not an expert on decontamination, but this is curiosity-driven question. I think Makia-san mentioned about a two-pronged approach that has been adopted in Fukushima. One is about the initiative by the central government in the high contaminated areas. And second one is for the low contaminated areas where technology and financial support is given to these municipal governments. About, if the number is correct, it is 104. Here my point of inquiry is, do we have an assessment framework to address this, to assess the capacity and capability of the municipal government to implement these projects? And the second one is about the experiences in Europe. And if I follow correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. And basically, this process, decontamination process, is a very long-term commitment, and it needs intersectoral synergy, and it has to adopt a multi-sectoral approach. So from that perspective, and you have bring some of the examples, but what are the real challenges that is you faced that could be a lessons learned for Japan in the case of developing intersectoral synergy and adopting a multi-sectoral approach, multi-stakeholder approach? Thank you.
Thank you. 後ろの方、はい、どうぞ。
Hello, my name is Kohei Watanabe. I'm from Teikyo University in Hachioji. My question is, I think what makes things difficult in this kind of situation is the gap between perceived risk and the actual measurable scientific risk. In Japanese, we often talk about anzen and anshin, and that's there's a gap between these two. And I suppose that kind of things also happened in Europe as well. And if anything has been done to narrow the gap, I would like to know. Thank you.
Okay. ここで一旦
Thank you. So I would like to close the list for now because we are running out of time. So there were several questions being raised. So if I could turn to the panelists to please respond. Now, on the first point about restarting the Oi nuclear power plant, for the decision making, what may be your impression and reaction? Professor Miranda Shiraz, please.
You actually asked me a very difficult question because I know that Japan is in the middle of a very important decision about its energy future. And it's not really my position to tell the Japanese government what to do. But I will be willing to say that I think for communication purposes, maybe it would have been useful to first make the decision about the energy future before starting any plants. Because I have the impression that there's so much mistrust now between the government and the people that every step that is taken is looked at with complete mistrust. And the reality is Japan is a country with a lot of earthquakes and there's instability. And it's also the reality that there's a lot of big cities near nuclear power plants. So I completely understand the concerns of people in Japan. At the same time, I can also understand that to go from 54 nuclear power plants to 0 nuclear power plants in such a short time is a shock to a system. But what we haven't seen in Japan yet is the consensus in society about where to move forward to. Where is Japan going to go? I think it's probably easier to accept a decision about a nuclear power plant going back online if you are given a clear signal from the government that the most insecure nuclear power plants will be shut down first. And I think that's a big difference between what happened with Germany and what's happened with Japan. The German government sent a very quick signal to society that it was serious about shutting down the nuclear power plants by, in the first 3 months, saying the oldest nuclear power plants and the ones that are most questionable, we'll shut those down now. And then we leave one on as reserve power, just in case we need it. And then we had the debate about how quickly do the others get shut down. But even more important was the debate about where does Germany go with its future? How can you develop a future that is sustainable, a future where you have new energy possibilities, new job possibilities, a chance to become less dependent on imported energy, and a chance to create a new vision for the young people of society and say, we have a vision, we want to go there. And I think that was something the German government did very well. Maybe I can say I'm an American, so I look at Germany as a foreigner and I look at Japan as a foreigner. And if I look at both responses, I think that's something Germany did really well. Of course, Germany also had a longer time developing this decision than Japan did. So I understand the resistance to the restarting of the Oi nuclear power plant. I can also understand the concerns about making sure there's a stable energy supply for the Osaka, Kyoto area.